Konnichiwa, I'm Alex with Lexico Moto Gymkhana. We are finally going to talk about brakes. Such an important topic. If you haven't watched the video before this one called The Magic Moment, make sure you check that video out because what we're going to talk about regarding brakes is going to have a lot to do with how we subdivide a tight U-turn into three parts. And you have to have an understanding of that and the magic moment in order for you to truly grasp what we're doing with the brakes in Moto Gymkhana. Now, the reason the brakes are tricky during Moto Gymkhana and any type of advanced motorcycle riding, the reason it's tricky is because the brakes are not just used in advanced motorcycling for slowing down the motorcycle. You use the brakes also to affect the geometry of the motorcycle, and this is gonna assist with turning the motorcycle. Now, if you haven't watched the Quintaro videos, again, I made a whole playlist in the playlist section. Check out the Quintaro videos because in the Quintaro videos, the instructor, Mr. Yoshida, talks at length about the effects of the front brake and the rear brake on the geometry and when to use them. Now, I'm still going to do a quick review right now of how the front and the rear brakes are used at different times. And I'm going to do that now before we talk about how we apply them and the timing of it during a U-turn. So let's quickly dive into the front brake first. So a few of the positive characteristics of the front brake. Number one, it's the more powerful brake, so it's going to be more useful during relatively faster speeds. And it's going to be the one that we're going to use mostly for shaving off the most speed. Number two, when it comes to how it affects the geometry of the motorcycle, the front brake is going to cause the weight of the rider and the motorcycle to come forward. This is going to compress the front forks, and this is going to shorten the wheelbase of the motorcycle. So you're actually making your motorcycle a little bit shorter by using that front brake and allowing that weight to transfer forward. So when we're leaning a motorcycle at faster speeds, we're leaning the bike, we can actually tighten our corners a little bit by using some front brake and compressing the front forks. When this happens, this is also going to give the front tire a little bit more traction when you're using the front brake smoothly, because as we compress the front forks, we're pushing that front tire into the ground and loading that front tire a little bit better, giving us a little bit better grip when we are leaning the bike at faster speeds. One of the negatives of the front brake happens when we are trying to turn slowly by turning the handlebars. If we use the front brake, we're actually compressing the front forks, loading that front tire, and the front tire is digging into the ground a little bit. That's why we have better traction, but it's going to make the front tire feel very heavy when we try to turn the handlebars. So front brake is not as good when we're trying to turn at lower speeds by turning the handlebars. Okay, now let's move on to the rear brake. The rear brake is not as powerful as the front brake, so it's not going to be very useful for when we're trying to shave off a lot of speed, but it's very useful for when we're turning at lower speeds because it's easier to modulate. It's not as aggressive, so we can use the rear brake for making fine speed adjustments at lower speeds. Also, when we get off of that front brake and we use rear brake, the rear brake is going to, when we get off of that front brake and use rear brake, it's going to unload the front. The weight is going to come off of the front, okay? And it's going to lighten up the front tire. So when we're trying to turn the handlebars, this is why the rear brake is better. It's actually extending the front forks a little bit, causing the wheelbase to extend a little bit. This makes us a little bit more stable, lightens up that front tire so it's not digging into the ground anymore, and it's going to help that front tire turn that handlebar quickly, and it's going to help kind of whip that front end of the motorcycle around the cone very easily. Now, one of the negatives of the rear brake is that if we try to use that rear brake too aggressively when we're going fast and trying to shave off a lot of speed, because of that weight transfer forward when we use front brake, if you're also very aggressive with the rear brake, you could end up losing traction in the rear and could cause you to slide that rear tire. And if it happens too drastically, it can end up in a high side crash. So that's the negative of the rear brake. That's why I try not to use the rear brake when I'm first coming into a corner, shaving off a lot of speed. Okay. So now that we have an idea a little bit of the characteristics of the front brake versus the rear brake, now let's go ahead and look at our whiteboard again. Remember the three parts of the corner, right? So we have the entrance, the magic moment, which is the transition point, and then we have the exit of the turn. Leaning the bike during the corner entrance, quick transition into handlebars turning at lower speeds, right? So let's quickly talk about what I do during a U-turn with each brake. So when I'm coming into the corner entrance, remember we're at relatively faster speeds, gotta slow down. I'm using mostly front brake here. All right, lightly. I'm not just grabbing at that front brake. I'm trailing into the corner as I lean the bike. I'm on that front brake. And as I approach the magic moment, I start to gently add rear brake. Okay. Once you feel that magic moment start to happen, you have to get off of that front brake smoothly and quickly. Because the magic moment, remember, that's when you feel the handlebars start to turn in by themselves. If you're still on that front brake, your front tire is digging into the ground, the front end is, compressed, and it's going to make the handlebars feel very heavy and sluggish. So once you feel the magic moment start to happen and those handlebars start to turn, get off of that front brake smoothly and quickly. And now we're depending on the rear brake to continue to slow down if you need to keep slowing down. So I'm now on the rear brake only. And if you get on the throttle and you use the rear brake, now you are allowing the front end of the motorcycle to extend. You're lightening up the front tire and the handlebars are going to turn much more smoothly and quickly. And now I'm on the throttle. I now trail off of the rear brake and now I exit my turn. Okay, so once again, corner entrance, I'm on the front brake. As I approach the magic moment, I start to trail onto the rear brake. The magic moment happens. I come off of the front brake. I'm only on the rear now. And as I go into the corner exit, now I start to smoothly come off of the rear brake. I'm already back on the throttle and I exit my corner. Okay. Like I said in the previous video, this is all going to be subject to interpretation. Every rider has their own way of timing all of that stuff. The magic moment, front brake, rear brake. So how is it that you have to use the brakes? Good question. That's going to be up to you to figure out through experimentation, through trial and error. Try recording yourself and feel what works best for you and your motorcycle, because everyone has slightly different variations on how to do it and how to time everything. Whew, that was a whole lot of information. If you guys have any questions, leave some comments down below and I'll do my best to answer your questions. A lot of information there, so it might take you a few watches of this video to get all this stuff down. Riders, thank you guys for watching this video. Until the next one, arigato and peace.